Hey card makers, Tricia Morris here at Club Scrap with the Wanderer card kit. We're starting out with just the papers from the collection. I've got the printed copy of the instructions here, as well as my accordion pocket file. This is going to help us stay organized. Now, if you don't have this, don't worry, just maintain 4 piles, A, B, C, and D, and maybe just use a Post-it note to label them. But otherwise, we're putting everything into one of these 4 pockets, and we'll just keep this right underneath the base of our trimmer so we can access our pockets easily. Now let's take all the paper that came in that Wanderer card kit. I'm just gonna place it upright in my arm here and sort the paper into the order we'll trim it. So we'll begin with 1 sheet of orange. It's pretty easy to identify. 1 sheet of the dark blue. It's very heavy paper, but make sure you have just 1. And then 1 white and 1 light blue. Next, we'll trim the orange again, and the craft, the other white, and the other light blue. Now, if I'm going too fast, you can always adjust the playback speed of these YouTube videos by going into your settings. Then grab the dark blue, the craft, then 1 print, put that face down, the other print face down on your work surface. And then you have 2 Cutaparts left. Take the one that has the larger one on the upper right corner that says, "Didn't we just do that about a year ago?" I'll put that face down. And finally, the last Cutapart here, with wherever a beautiful soul has been, there's a trail of beautiful memories. Oh, that's a nice sentiment. Now, there's your stack all sorted. Flip it back over to where we began with the orange. Let's take this orange now. We need to determine the grain direction of this paper. So hold it by an edge and study the behavior of the paper. So mine's pretty, pretty droopy in this direction. And this edge, it's a little bit more stiff. Now with this orange, it might be harder to tell. You can always really double check by pushing against the paper. And this definitely wants to droop in this direction. So I want you to place the paper into the trimmer, drooping from the top to the bottom. And that will also match the direction of the arrow. That's the direction of the droop that I'm looking for in the paper. And then I'm going to repeat that with the blue. Now this is pretty stiff. It's stiff in both directions basically, but definitely more relaxed going this way. So that's why I want to place the paper down into the trimmer. By paying attention to that grain, it's going to the paper will fold more easily when it comes time to do that. All right, so let's stacking these 2 pieces together, trimming at the same time using my Fisker's guillotine style trimmer. Now, when you're trimming 2 sheets at a time, it's really important that you stabilize on that clear bar before we cut. That first measurement is at 11 1/4. Always make sure you're looking at the inches and not the centimeters in the top row of numbers here. So I'm finding 11 and then go left 1 vertical column to find 11 1/4. Again, stabilize very firmly here. And then move the paper down to the whole number 7. A nice whole number 7. Stabilize. Now rotate. And we'll trim at 8. I'll make sure those papers are still matched up nicely here. 8 inches. Now this is going to become a card and we need to score it. So I'm going to set this aside in a pile away from everything. I usually put it on top of my score pile, which I have on my table here. Then this other rectangular piece, I want you to trim it at 6 inches. So horizontally, so the long way, like a landscape, at 6. And then place this in pocket C. And then this little strip here in A. And then you have this other long 12-inch piece here. We'll cut this one at 11. So horizontally at 11. This goes into the pile to be scored. And then this little piece fell off the end. That goes in pocket A as well. And then you have this long strip. I don't have a specific assignment for it yet, so we're going to put that in pocket D. We get to repeat all of that now with the white. So once again, I will check the dipping direction, making sure it dips easily from top to bottom with the white. And I'll do the same thing with the blue. Very floppy this way, so that's the direction it goes in. Starting out at 11 1/4 again, stabilizing firmly. Don't be tempted to move the papers as they fall, just leave them where they land. And then we move down to 7. rotate and cut at 8. Here we have 2 more pieces to be scored. Take the rectangle that fell and trim at 6. Pocket C for this one. And then you have the little guy that fell in A. Take the next strip here. We're going to trim it at 11. Get 2 more pieces to be scored. And then you've got the shorter ones for pocket A and the longer ones in D. That's it for that diagram. Now we're going to do another 4-sheet diagram as well. So it's repeating 2 sheets at a time. The dip of the grain needs to go in the same direction now, dipping top to bottom on the orange. And this time we'll take this beautiful craft, very stiff in this direction, very dippy. So dipping top to bottom. Completely different numbers now. 10.5. And 6.25. Rotate and trim at 9. Take these larger pieces, set them aside to be scored. And then we have our narrower rectangle here. We'll cut at 4.25. The large panels in A, well, they're not that big, but the smaller ones, those go in B. And then I'll take the next long strip here. First cut's at 11.5. Now stay with me here, pay attention. 5.5. And then rotate that 5.5-inch piece so it's vertical and trim at 3 3/4. This larger panel in pocket B. And we did have some little guys fall off the end. You can place those in D if you like. Then you have another larger panel, also B. And then 2 little guys for D. Here you have this strip. It's 1.5 by 12. We'll trim it at 6.25. The 6.25-inch piece you just made, pocket B, and then the smaller one in C. We're going to do that with 2 more sheets. The white, drooping top to bottom. The light blue. I had a double check on that one. So this is a repeat of what we just did, starting out at 10.5. 6.25. Now rotate and cut at 9. Okay, these are bases for our cards. That goes in the scoring pile. And then we have this strip. We'll trim at 4.25. Pocket A for this, and the smaller ones in B. And now we have this next strip. This is 4.25 by 12 right now. We'll cut at 11.5. Then 5.5. Now rotate. So now you're turning that piece so it's vertical. And trim at 3 3/4. So you made these panels and then the other larger ones that fell. Those are designed to nest. Isn't that cool? So they all go in pocket B. And then you made a set of 4 little scraps. You probably throw those out. I don't think I used them at all, but I'm throwing them in D either way. And now we have this last strip here. We're going to trim at 6.25. Pocket B, and then the other one's in C. Moving on now to the dark blue, the remaining dark blue. I'm going to check my grain, but this time I want the paper to be pushed in easily from left to right. We've always been doing the top to bottom. Now we want left to right. We're going to trim here at 10. And take this entire large 10-inch sheet, set it aside in your scoring pile. And then you have this other narrow strip. We're going to trim that at 7.25. For right now, I'm going to put it aside like in the E pile because that's for the box we're going to be making. This we'll put in D. And then we're moving on to this craft. I want it to dip easy left to right again. That's good. And I'm going to give you one weird measurement, so don't worry. Okay, we're going to start it at 9 1/4. 9 1/4. Stabilize. Then I want you to move a little bit to your right to 9 1/8. Now if you look carefully here, 9 1/8 is halfway between the 9 and the 9 1/4. There's this medium-sized line. That's 9 1/8. There it is. 9 1/8. Stabilize. There we go. Now we're going to rotate this piece so it's horizontal and trim at sort of another weird measurement, 11 1/8. So that's halfway between 11 and 11 1/4. There's that one in the middle right there. That's 11 1/8. Stabilize. And set this large piece aside to be scored. Then you have a couple of little scrappies. And then we have this last strip here. Let's trim this one horizontally at 9, 6, and 3. Gather up all the pieces and place them in pocket C. Next, we're going to take the print and let's just orient the print so it's right side up. And we don't need to worry about the grain direction because the paper will never be folded. Let's start at 9 3/4. And here's a time-saving tip for you. The blade of the trimmer stays up on its own, so you can move, you can push and pull with 2 hands. And when I'm doing make and takes, that's what I notice sometimes can trip people up, is if the hand is up here on the blade and they only have one hand with which to measure, it takes a lot longer to find the measurement accurately. So 9 3/4, stabilize. 7 1/2. 3 3/4. Now rotate so it's horizontal. We'll trim at 10 5. And gather up the 2 larger panels for pocket A. And then the other piece is a scrap. Throwing that in D. Let's repeat that for the next strip. Again at 10 5. So 10, 5. Pocket A. And the rectangle in D. And to stick these last 2 strips, let's put them so they're facing each other on the white sides, back to back. We'll trim these at the same time. We're going to go 11 and 5 1/2. Now, if you want, you can just take a second and get them facing the right way again and place them in pocket B. And there are some little scraps that fell off the end. The other print, once again, we'll face it so that it's right side up from your perspective. We'll trim at 7 1/2, 3 3/4. Face the papers back to back, once again, the 2 that are the same, that is. And we'll trim them at the same time. Let's see, 11 1/2 and 5 3/4. Okay, let's take these, face them correctly, and place them all in pocket C. There were 2 little scrappies that fell off the end. And this last strip will trim at 6 1/2. Let's take this piece now, this larger one, and set it aside with that blue strip that we put aside earlier. This is for the box. And then the remaining scrap goes in pocket D. And here we've arrived at our Cutaparts. You'll notice there's some text on the outside of the print because they're a little bit larger than 12 inches right now. We want to make them 12 inches by removing the outer perimeter and using that little X mark as our cutting guide. So I'm going to try to bring that X pretty close to the blade. I'm not going to go right to it. I'm going to go near it and then do like a cleanup cut on my last rotation. So now I'm rotating, bringing every edge to the blade. I can see the edge of my silver blade here on my trimmer. And then I'm lining up that little hash mark with the blade, both at the top and bottom. And then now I make this rotation, I should be able to find the 12 on my left. And then one final turn to bring it to 12. And I've got these little scrappies. I can dispose of them. Place this in your trimmer now with the didn't we just do that about a year ago? That'll be on the right. And our measurement here is 8.5. Always just double check to make sure you're not going to cut through any artwork. This will help you verify you've got the right measurement. Then 5 3/4. And then 4. Now rotate this piece and notice all the others are just piling up here. Rotate and we'll cut at 11. 8 1/4. 5 1/2. 2 3/4. Gather up these rectangles that are all the same size, and we're going to place that in pocket A. This ends up being an optional piece. I don't know if I cut this at 2, it's probably going to give me 2 little pieces that match. Let's wander where the Wi-Fi is weak. Let's set that aside. Then we have this next piece. I'll trim it horizontally with the truck, or the Jeep or whatever on the right. We'll cut at 11. 8 1/4. 5 1/2. 2 3/4. Gather up all these rectangles for pocket B. And the little Jeep, we can set him aside. We might use him. Now we have the word greetings will be on your right. And we'll start at 10. 7 1/2. 5. 2 1/2. Okay, so these, the same size, I'll go in pocket C, and then you've got the greetings. I'm gonna add this to my pile of items for the box. And then lastly, so much world, so little time on the right, and we'll cut at 10 1/2, 5 1/4, the 2 larger elements for pocket B. And this one, let's pop this in C. Just one more cut apart. We have to do the same treatment by removing that outer perimeter here. So we'll start again. I'll cut shy on one side and then try to line up the hash marks as best as you can on the remaining edges. And if you want, you can pause me while you finish up that task. Let's place this now into the trimmer with the binoculars in the upper right corner. We'll trim at 6 1/2. Now I'll rotate and cut at 9, 6, and 3. I do this commonly. 9, 6, 3. All of these go in pocket C now. And then we have this last strip. Make sure that chase that is on the right. So you're taking the narrowest pieces off first. The measurement is 9 3/4. And then 7 1/2, 3 3/4. Okay, these 2 larger pieces for pocket B. And then we need to take these guys, we're going to trim them in half at 2 3/4 for each of those, 2 3/4. And all 4 of these little sentiments go in pocket A. I know it seemed like a lot of trimming. It was a lot of trimming. We trimmed, what, 12 regular pieces of paper and then 2 sheets of Cutaparts. But I promise you, it's worth that effort. And if you felt a little bit discombobulated, maybe you're newer at this, just hang in there with me. Do a few more of my card workshops. I promise it will get easier with practice, like anything. I'm working on learning step aerobics right now, and the first time I do a class, I feel very discombobulated. And after I watch it a second or third time, I have all the moves down, and it's even more enjoyable. So just hang in there. Just please be encouraged by that. I'll get rid of my trimmer at this point and swap it for a score pal. For my scoring tool, I usually skip the plastic tool that's included with the score pal, and I use a metal tip stylus. We do usually carry these at Club Scrap just in case you don't have something like this. They come in a pack of 3, but I use the one that doesn't have anything on one end and has the largest ball on the other. Okay, so we have all these weird pieces. I'm keeping them in the order that we place them in the pile, and just to do all of our scoring at the same time. Now for this first sheet of craft, we are going to score at 7/8 of an inch and 1 3/4 of an inch from each edge. So 7/8, let's do that first. The 7/8 is halfway between the 3/4 and the 1. So you need to have a score pal that has eighths on it. This was the score pal eighths. So I'm finding 7/8. And this is a very heavy paper. Notice I'm holding my scoring tool like a pencil so I can control the amount of pressure on that line. You're welcome to make a second pass. And if you push too hard, you'll tear the paper, obviously, but it's hard to do on this craft. The second number now again is 1 3/4. So 1 3/4. Okay, now I need to rotate the paper. I'm going to repeat that. 7/8, 1 3/4. Rotate. 7/8, 1 3/4. Rotate. 7/8, 1 3/4. Ta-da, that's it. Set this aside. I'm going to put out all my materials for my box. Now we have the dark blue. This is a pretty large sheet. Measurements are different for our scoring around the perimeter, and there are 2 numbers again, 1 1/8, 2 1/4. So 1 1/8 can be found halfway between the 1 and the 1 1/4. That's 1 1/8. 2 1/4. Rotate. 1 1/8, 2 1/4. Rotate. 1 1/8, 2 1/4. The final turn, 1 1/8, 2 1/4. And we set this large scored sheet aside with our stuff for our box. Next, I'm going to find all 4 of my pieces that measure 6 1/4 by 9. Let's place them into the score pal horizontally. We'll score at 4 1/2. So you have the 9-inch side here. The white, it isn't quite as firm, so just be a little more gentle. 4 1/2. The craft is heavier. We'll score at 4 1/2, more firmly. And the orange, a little bit of a lighter hand, 4 1/2. And these can all be placed in pocket B. Doesn't matter what order it goes in, the pocket will be dumped out anyway. Then you should have some sheets that are long and skinny. There's going to be 4 of them. Find all 4. We'll place them into the score pal horizontally. So you should see 4 1/2 here, 11 here. We'll score at 5 1/2. Be more careful with your pressure on the orange. You want to rip the paper. More firm with the blue. More gentle with the white. That's 5 1/2 on all of them. And we'll place them in pocket A. Lastly, we have these other weird sizes. Doesn't look big enough to be a card, but it will work out, I promise. We're going to place them into the score pal so that the 8 is here and the 7 is here. Be really careful. Make sure it says 8. If it says 7, it's going to be all wrong, okay? 8. Now, we're going to score at 5 for each one of these. If you're scoring with the printed paper, like let's say you're following these same instructions with a different collection and you end up having a print, typically we'll score with the print side facing up. If you have a paper that has a texture, like a right side or a wrong side, make sure the right side is facing up. And we'll file these in pocket C. That's it for the scoring. Let's start by making our cute little box. This is a 5x7 box, so it will hold all of the cards in this kit. It's not big enough to hold all 12, but any size of the card in this collection up to 5x7. So let's start by preparing the dark blue paper to make our base. I'm going to turn this over so that the bumps of the score lines are facing me. I find it's a little easier to see that way. And I'm going to always work with the paper position vertically. And let's identify, we've got this outermost score line, vertical line, then we have one next to it, and then we have the innermost over here and the one on the outside. What we're going to do first is make a dart on the second score line from the right. Again, the paper is vertical. That's really important. So I'm going to cut on the right side of the score line, and then cut on the left side of the score line in like a real narrow V shape. And I'm stopping when I reach the second intersecting score line. Do you see that? So it makes this pretty long dart, and I just pull that dart out and get rid of it. There you go. Now I'm going to take my scissors and go to the left of the outermost score line and cut toward the intersecting second score from the bottom. And now that makes a little tab. Now this whole entire corner here needs to be removed. To do that, I'm going to go in from the edge, go from the outside of the score line above it to the intersecting score where I have that cut, and just take out that whole entire corner. I hope you can see that. Now I need to recreate this scene on the left. So I'm going to start out, this is the second vertical score line. I'm going to go to the right of it and cut toward the intersection of the second line here. Boom. I'm going to go to the left of that score line and cut in a V shape, a narrow V, to create a dart. And again, I'm going to pull that out. We're going to take out this entire corner. I'm also going to remove this score line completely. Stop when I reach the second intersecting score. There's my tab I want to keep. Then this has to go and that score line has to go. So I'm just going to enter from the side here, take out the corner. Now I've got two tabs and I've got a flap here. Now rotate the piece 180 degrees. So now my tabs are at the top, they're pointing up. And we need to repeat all of that. So again, second score line, make your dart. I'm gonna go a little faster now. If you need the slow version, just rewind. Take out the dart. Then I'm gonna take out the entire corner plus the score lines. Gone. Repeat here, this second score line from the left, I'll make my dart and remove it. Then I'm going to get rid of this whole score line by cutting to the right side of it and then come in from the side. Take that out. Beautiful. So we've got 4 little corners and 4 little darts. We can get rid of all of those. And let's take the craft piece. I'm going to turn that over to so the raised sides are there, and repeat the same exact thing. So it's going to be a little smaller though, right? Because this is the lid and it's shorter. So I'm taking out my corners and my darts while I'm holding this paper vertically. That's so important. Take out the corner. Good. Now rotate 180 degrees and repeat that. You get really good at this. And then you can make a box any size you wish if you just do the math, which is probably, again, the most challenging thing. You really have to think about how high you want your walls to be, how big you want the base of the box to be. And I usually just use my handy graph paper to draw everything out. So now I've got my 4 tabs all pointing to top and bottom, and get rid of all my little darts and corners. The next thing you can do, and this is basically, again, with both, is you can fold on all of the score lines. So make sure that when you fold, make sure the bump of the score line ends up on the inside of the fold. And I'm just going to do that with the long walls here. And then the short walls, same thing. Now you have those tabs. The tabs have 2 score lines, but ignore the first one and just fold on the innermost to get those tabs ready to go. So just do the wall first. Again, you want to bury the bumps of those score lines, and on the tabs only fold on the innermost. Repeat that for the box base as well. I'm going to work your way around here. So one way you're folding with the grain and the other you're folding against it, and you'll be able to kind of tell. I had you trim the paper so that the longest wall would be folded with the grain, because it has to fold in all 4 directions. So in the end, you're going to be against the grain at some point. And then just these guys. Okay, so now we have these things that are going to grow up to become your box. It's just so wonderfully easy. Position the piece vertically on your work surface so that your tabs are pointing up and down, okay? And you have, these are your long walls, these are your short walls. I'm going to take my ATG gun, or take your favorite adhesive. I'm going to place adhesive on the outermost long flap, kind of near the edge, the outside edge of the flap. And all I want you to do here is just fold the flap onto itself to form a double thickness of paper. Remember, your tabs are still here at the top and bottom. Now I'm going to apply adhesive to the outside flap of the short walls only. So I'm kind of near the top and here. So you have got adhesive here and here. So next, turn up the corner so it's at a 90-degree angle with the table. Do that on this side too. Now turn in the long wall, and I'm just going to kind of hold it there with two of my fingers and then take my thumbs and bring this flap of the bottom wall up and around those tabs and just bond it. You can do this with book binding glue too, by the way. So I have my tabs turned inward, the bottom flap goes up and over, and I have my box. Isn't that great? So bring in the second one, make sure your tabs are pointing up and down. Adhesive goes on the outermost long tab here, and fold the paper onto itself. Now I'm going to apply adhesive to the shorter flap on each end. Turn my tabs in, bring the walls up, and then the flap here at the bottom goes up and around, rotate and repeat up and over here. Okay, let's just hope everything went well. Yes, my lid goes on my box beautifully. Now what we can do is decorate the lid. It's pretty easy. I'm going to take this long piece of navy and I'll just apply adhesive to this. It's going to be kind of an anchoring piece. And I'm just going to add this to the left side of my box so that it's an equal reveal at the top, left, and bottom edge. If you want to use a grid ruler, you can. Now this piece, I want to add a little bit of a ribbon embellishment to this. So I'm going to take the navy or the blue grosgrain here, and I'll stretch a length of it across that's a little bit longer, wider rather than the print here. And I'm going to just cut that. Then I'm going to fold a little piece. This is going to be like what I call a 3-part bow. So I want to have a bow with 2 loops. So I'm going to fold the ribbon in half and have it so that it's going to end up being a loop that's narrower than the width of this print. And I'll cut that so it's like a loop, right? And I'm going to form it into a loop. Check the grain of the ribbon. I'm going to fold the way the ribbon wants to be folded. Bring those ends together, and I'm going to take a piece of cellophane tape here and just tape it so that it maintains its loopy shape. Then I'm going to take another piece of ribbon. Oh, it's go about 2 inches. We'll probably have to cut it shorter anyway. I'll take this ribbon and I'm going to tape it back to the center of that strip I cut earlier to form like a T shape. So here's my T. Now take this looped ribbon, make it so that the taped area is at the center, and then put that right in the middle of your T. Then take the ribbon that forms the T, wrap it around, and bring it to the back. And I'm going to use 2 little pieces of tape to secure that loop that you made, and then come in with scissors and then cut off the excess so that you can't see it. And now you have this beautiful 3-part bow. It's nice and flat, so this is great for card making too. Looks so nice. Then I'm going to wrap it around my print here. 2 more pieces of tape, and I keep my tape in a dispenser like this so it has weighted and I can just grab it with one hand. I'm going to center this on the box. So I'll take my ATG once again, center onto the box, equal all the way around, and it's anchored nicely by this piece here. Then you can add your greetings. You can do this with foam adhesive or just regular adhesive. And I'm gonna have it extending past the edge a little bit. Ta-da! You have a beautiful 5x7 gift box. Set this aside, let's get going on set A for the cards. I'll empty the pocket labeled A, or you're gonna get the stuff out of pile A. And take a moment and just sort the pieces in order by size. There's gonna be these narrow strips too. Some will be shorter and some will be longer, but both the same width. We have our card bases, some panels, printed, plain, and sentiments. And next, you can flip the cards over so that the bump of the score is facing up. Go ahead and fold all those cards by burying the bump of the score line inside the fold. You'll notice that I always line up the corners first before I make the crease. Even though we've scored this ahead of time, I don't like just trusting that the score line is going to be perfect. I want to make sure you line up those corners so you have a nice even edge. Now let's do what I call the deal. So we'll take our card bases. Let's begin with navy, or dark blue rather, and then light blue. And then horizontally we'll go orange and white. Now this is a long edge fold, so they'll make sure your folds are facing the right way so you don't end up adhering things to the wrong side of the card. Next, this is a nice easy part. Every card receives a print. And then every card receives a plain mat. So we'll go orange, white, light blue, and craft. Let's do the sentiments as well. We'll have the craft colored, whatever makes you feel the sun. These are the vertical. And then there is a magic that is all your own. We'll go orange and light blue. Then for the innies, we'll take the orange, chase that. The light blue, chase that. The craft, have a marvelous day, and the blue, have a marvelous day. Now we had these little strips, and it doesn't really matter. I'll start out with the longer strips. Let's go light blue, dark blue, white, and orange. And from these other ones, I'll go white, orange, dark blue, light blue. There. Now every piece exists for these cards with inside and out. Now we have a set of envelopes here. These are the smallest envelopes in the set. What you can do is just take everything from that card, put it in an envelope. Everything from this card, put it in an envelope. Now you can assemble these all right away if you want, but we're just gonna do one together since all the rest go, are assembled in the same exact way. So we can just set these aside, and then we just have our one that's ready to go for us now. This is an unnecessary but sweet little finishing touch. If you happen to have a corner chomper, I'm gonna take these strips and just round 2 of the corners on one short edge. That's it, easy peasy. So what we can do here is take like this blue strip. I'll add some adhesive. And then I'll grab my grid ruler. Now when you're working with the grid ruler, just make sure that the ruler is facing right side up so you can read the numbers correctly. And I'm gonna find 1/4 of an inch from the edge of this panel when it's vertical. And 1/4 of an inch is 2 cubes on the ruler. And I'm gonna line up the straight edge of my strip with the top edge of the panel. I'll just rotate and repeat the same exact task. This is just a fun way to get a little bit more color onto the card. So again, 1/4 of an inch from the edge. I'm only doing that 1/4 of an inch thing so that it's level, okay? It doesn't have to be measured. Then I'm going to take this panel, whatever makes you feel the sun, and I'm gonna adhere it to the orange. Get a little bit more stable. Make a 2-part, like a chain link bow. So I'm gonna take this taffeta ribbon here and cut a length wider than the vertical card or vertical sentiment here. 2 of them. I think I found a faster way to make this kind of bow. Do you see how the ribbon's curling? This wants to go up, this wants to go down. So I'm gonna crisscross those ribbons and grab the ends like that. I don't have a good loop here. Make sure it's not twisted. See this? I give it a little tug. Then, depending on your coordination level, I'm gonna just stretch this across the top here. And what's so nice about this is it's adding ribbon to the card without a big knot. It's just a simple twist of ribbon. Flip it around to the back, and I'll grab my handy tape again and tape those ends on the back. Now you can split those ends apart more if you wanted, like I did on my finished sample. I have a little bit of distance between them, or you can do it like this. Either way, really sweet. Now this gets added, so I'll put adhesive on this one here and center this. You don't even really see one of the rounded corners, but that's okay. You and I both know it's there. And then I will center this. I think it's 1/4 of an inch reveal. So once again, 2 cubes on the ruler. I just like to make a habit of using that ruler for placement so that I don't glue things up or downhill. Now we have a sentiment for the inside of the card. Chase that. We have a whole entire pocket D that we can use. We have all these odds and ends here. What could we do to brighten up this inside? What if we grab a piece of, let's see, how about craft? I'm going to use this to give me a little bit of an anchor. So I'm going to take the piece. It's much longer than the card, right? So if I place this on the card and I add some adhesive and I stop when I reach the bottom of the card, or slightly before it. Now, when you want to add a little anchoring strip that goes the full length of a card that has a fold like this, I like to have the top folded up a little so that I'm pushing up against the score line and not going past it and negatively affecting the functionality of the card. Once you have that, you can bring it to the trimmer and cut it off, which I prefer, or you can take scissors and remove that extra. Then we can have her chase that. Now what I did add on my original sample is a state sticker. Now your kit comes with all 50 states. So let's say you're making this card for your pal who lives in Arizona. You could add the Arizona sticker to this. It would be so super cute. I mean, really cool. However you want to arrange it. But I don't know who I'm going to send this card to. So I'm going to leave my state sticker off. I could put the state sticker on the front as well somehow. You know, however you want to use those state stickers, put them on the envelopes. We just decided you absolutely had to have them, okay? You had to. This might be a fun little spot. I'm just gonna do this to put our little car. Get the car there. So cute. There's your sweet little card. Now, from my other samples, we have the same, this is the card that we made. Oh, I used Colorado on my sample. And then here we have the same thing. Same assembly style. Oh, and I used some of the print and the Idaho sticker on this one. Shout out to Ruth Ann. I think my friend Ruth Ann lives in Idaho. Then we have There Is a Magic About You. Now you can see the ribbon trick is a little different. All I did was stretch one piece of ribbon across the panel and I taped it at the back. So it's not using a full wraparound. Then to that ribbon, I tied on a small bow and trimmed the ends. So that's my little two-part ribbon trick. I did the same thing on the inside. Again, a little scrap, a little state sticker, Kansas, and Alabama. Have a marvelous day. Again, I used my little trick here, rounded some corners there for a nice effect. Adds a little color to the inside of that card. And now this first one is done, so I can take my envelope and this is all set to go and we're ready for set B. Take everything out of the B pocket. You have a lot in there. And then I highly recommend just a quick sort of all items in the pocket. As usual, you can flip everything over to the bump side and go ahead and fold all of these cards in half, and you can pause me while you do that. Let's distribute the card bases into one of 4 piles. So we'll start out with the craft, then light blue, then orange, and white. And now I can take my next largest panels here. They're plain. We're going to distribute orange, and you can swap these colors out however you like. Craft, white, and blue. Then each card base gets yet another mat. So we'll go white here, orange on this one, light blue, and craft. So it's so much color. Each one will get a print. That's pretty easy. Just distribute that. Then we have a smaller rectangular mat. So we're gonna go light blue here. Basically the color that's not yet representative, white, craft, and orange. Then a smaller sentiment. Life is a journey. It's your birthday again. Thank you and thank you. Now we have our inner sentiments. Let's go with fill your tank with joy. Didn't we just do that about a year ago? And then the binoculars and the compass in big ways and small ways. We had this extra strip. Now it could have gone into the circular file, but I decided to use it as an anchoring device on the inside of each card. So we'll go light blue, white, orange, and craft. Now bring in your medium-sized envelopes, the smaller of the two remaining, and we'll take this one. And we're just gonna add all those card pieces to 3 of the envelopes, and then we'll assemble the one card together. These go together so easily, you're gonna love it. Here we are. Now, I think we'll begin with just the hardest part, and it's not even that hard. I'll nest this piece, Life is a Journey, onto the little sentiment, or little cut apart, onto the nesting panel. And then remember these cute little, oh, they're so little and so sweet. We have this twine that we've included 2 yards of in your kit. So I'm gonna trim off 2 pieces that are wider than where we're headed. I'd rather just have too much than not enough to work with here. So I'll trim 2 lengths. Again, they're wider than the panel. I'm gonna take one of them and fold it in half. And then I'll take my charm and get out your reading glasses, my friends. I'm gonna fold that, bring that folded edge through the loop on the charm. Okay, then once you have your loop, bring the ends through, just like you would with a luggage tag or something. Repeat for the other side. So just make sure you enter from the same side. So I went from the back to the front. Make sure you do that for your second piece, or just be consistent. Doesn't matter which direction. I think it should be the same. And once you get that loop through, open it up, bring the ends through it, and pull. Now it can be really helpful if you happen to have a glue dot. Put the glue dot on the back of the charm and burnish it. Remove the backing. Those are just like a small glue dot. And I'm going to center this kind of on the upper portion of this panel here. And that's, the glue dot just holds it all there. If you don't have one, you can do without, but it's just easier. Then I'm going to split apart the ribbon ends and bring it around to the back. And guess what? Secure with tape. Repeat for the other side. Yeah, it's so handy to have that charm stabilized and in place before you try to do this wrapping. And if you want, you can just cut away any excess. All right, now the rest of the job here for the outside of the card is your basic assembly. Now, one little trick, a little time saver I like to do is just get all the pieces that need to be nested facing wrong side up, and I can just run my adhesive all along. Okay, so the largest one here is the orange, so that goes first. And then you have the white next. Maybe I will use my 2 cube helper. And then I'll do it as well on this. I'm going to go 2 cubes, I guess, from the edge of the white panel. This one I'm going to add to the upper right corner, kind of 2 cubes-ish from that side. So it's well balanced. Open up the card. I'll take this long strip. And I'll do a right side anchor here. So I'm going to go 2 cubes from the right edge, rest the panel, and finally the sentiment. If you want to eyeball that, you can. Fill your tank with joy. And your card is complete. You could add more stuff, of course, from the D pile. Absolutely add more color. You've got some strips to work with. Your card is in the envelope, ready to mail. Yay. The other samples, here is the matching, it's your birthday again. Didn't we do that about a year ago? Same story. I just love this assembly line. Now that you have the method down, you have the supplies trimmed and ready to go. Everything's mathematically perfect, and you can finish your remaining 3 cards. Let's move on to the final set. Let's empty everything from pocket C. Nothing too complicated in this set other than the box, which you've, I'm sure, had no problem with, right? Boxes are so fun to make. They make wonderful hostess gifts. Let's see. Let's get all these pieces sorted here. And our card bases are ready to go. Flip to the bump side. And just take a moment and fold all of these in. You won't have to worry about matching up the ends, but do make sure that when you fold over, that the edges of the flap line up with the card. Another time saver is to do what I would call like a finger burnish. Then stack all the cards together like this, and take your bone folder and just give it a burnish once from each side. So instead of burnishing 4 times, you only have to do it 2. I hope that made sense. Now, I'm going to take my white, orange, dark blue, and light blue. From the panels that you have the larger plain panels. Let's start with those. We'll do the orange, dark blue, light blue, white. Then each one will receive a print. 1, 2, 3, 4. Each one gets a little strip here. We'll go light blue, white, orange, and craft. How about a craft square? And I think it's vertically, it's not quite square. So it's going to be in a vertical position. Then you've got mountains of wishes with sincere sympathy and the blue, and then with the orange. Then you have your inner sentiments. The orange, have a wonderful day. The blue, have a wonderful day. The light blue, wherever, a beautiful soul, and then the craft on this one. This so much rolled, so little time, I used it on the first card. I'll take my 5x7 envelopes, the 4 that remain, and I'm going to shove the contents of the last 3 cards into the envelope. Let's set those aside. Let's set aside the card base for now and just work with our mats and some of our decor. I'll add the printed panel to the plain panel. And then I've got this little piece, this little strip here. I'm going to take some of this orange ribbon and measure it to be a little longer than the panel. And I'm going to go like toward the right edge. Just tape the end. Make sure you're not pulling too hard on this when you wrap it around so it doesn't cause it to pucker. With that attached, I see that I added my little car to this card. I'm going to go 2 cubes from the printed panel with the ribbon kind of on the right side. It's just designer preference at this point. Now I have the Mountains of Wishes with a nesting panel, so let's get those paired up. How about we find some of the blue ribbon? I'm going to cut a trapezoid, so I'm going to cut at an angle one direction and at an angle facing the other. That way when I fold this in half, I have a really nice topper. Bring it up to the top edge center, and I'll give that a little staple. It's totally optional. If you happen to have some foam adhesive circles, you can use those to mount your panel. I like to cut them in half and then just make sure they're distributed. And then if you cut them in half and preserve the little pull tab, it just makes it so much easier to remove the backing. Now you can eyeball this for center. Make sure you don't go too far past. Okay, now this is ready to go. It already looks like a finished card, doesn't it? But it needs to go onto this piece. Now, let's check our centering here. I think it's going to be 1/2 inch from the top, bottom, and side. Now, what you have to be aware of here is that there is a 3-inch flap. So you don't want adhesive going past it, or you're going to glue the card closed. So again, my tip for this is I'm going to place my ruler here, a full 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to flip this panel over. And now I can see the seam of my flap. So all I have to do, make sure when you flip this over, you do it this way and not this way, okay? So flip it over. All I have to do is run my adhesive everywhere except past that seam. I use that trick a lot. And now just a 1/2 inch from the top and bottom. It's perfectly level, perfectly centered with no adhesive where it doesn't belong, okay? Now this last piece, I want you to attach this so it's 1/4 inch from the top, bottom, and right edge of the card. Okay, so I have my ruler kind of in position. 1/4 inch. Perfect. Now at this point, I can take anything from these strips. I can add a strip to this edge, like to bring out the blue. I'm gonna do that. So let's find out what the height is here. It's 6.5. So I'm gonna quick trim this. And then just to add a little bit of interest, I'll round 2 corners on opposing edges on one side. Oh, this adds, it really brings out the color of that waterfall in the graphic. Just rest it against the edge. So nice. And you get just this little peak of a frame around the side, which I love. So there's your little card. And now I did put my car on the inside of card 1 set A, and I cut the car out and put it on this. It doesn't really matter. It was just a little addition. That's really sweet there as well. Oh, and then the so much rolled, so little time. I forgot to add that. Let's go ahead and add it to our final card, set C. Oh, I love it. That's it. This is so easy. Okay, this is the next one. You again use your state sticker. If you know where you're going to send this, it's for my friend Jenny. She lives in Maine. Okay, Mountains of Wishes. Oh, and I used them here. Let's wonder whether Wi-Fi is weak. So that I can have with this set as well. Notice I rounded the corners. I added a little piece here and here. I got a little scrap happy. Here's a sympathy card. Very, very appropriate imagery for that. And a second sympathy card. I always need a lot of those, unfortunately. There you have it. The Wanderer card kit. Do you love it? I hope you love it. I hope you love this box too. You can put all your 5x7 cards in the box along with their envelopes. So nice, right? If you like this collection, I have a set of 8 12x12 scrapbook pages you can make with it, with our page kit in the same theme. They're wonderful. But also stay tuned for a bunch of awesome projects I'll be featuring using the Wanderer collection throughout the month. And of course, if you're not already a member of Club Scrap, please join us, save $8 on every kit, and become a member of a very creative, fun, friendly family here at Club Scrap. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining me.